Wardancer is one of the best classes in the Korean endgame. She has great synergy party buffs, great easy DPS mechanics, and very agile as well. They're usually invited in a priority in many endgame raids. However, you may feel weak when you're playing this class. This is because NA servers content and users collectibles and experiences are not there yet. Unlike my how to play videos, this class video is going to be a little different. It may feel a little bit advanced for you. Wardancer has two types of skills, Esoteric and normal skills. Esoteric skills require you to use 2 bubbles. Some use 1, but main DPS skills are 2 bubble use skills. You use your normal skills to fill up your bubbles, and use your esoteric skills to dish out the damage. The class's cooldown needs to be very short, and mana spending needs to be controlled. So without gears, combat stats, runes, and tripods, you'll find yourself very weak. Hence, this is why the class is very tough for newbie players. Wardancer's mandatory critical skills are Wind's Whisper, Roar of Courage, and Energy Combustion. Let's talk about them real quick. Wind's Whisper is a Wardancer's critical buff skill. It provides 16.6% crit rate and 49.7% increased damage for 6 seconds at max tripod level. If you select the Wind's Whisper tripod, the first tripod's efficiency increases by 100%, which will give 33.2% crit rate. Roar of Courage. This provides 8% crit rate because it drops their crit resistance. If you get the third tripod, it increases another 10%, so 18% in total for 6 seconds. You would usually use the Wealth Rune and More Bubbles tripod for Esoteric, or you can use the other ones for the First Intention for less mana usage. You can use the Focus Rune as well. Energy Combustion. Wardancer creates an energy field, and it explodes after 20 seconds. Keep in mind, between a good Wardancer and a bad one, they make sure the skill's last tick always lands. As for Esoteric, you will select additional bubble gain, and as for First Intention, you either get the movement speed or additional defense. So as you see here, every tick you land, you gain your bubble. And as it finishes, it glows red, and then explodes for the most damage. You will have to land this damage. If you use Wind's Whisper and Roar of Courage without any combat stats, you have natural 51.2% crit rate for 6 seconds. If you have crit combat stat and party synergy and adrenaline engraving as well, it can go up to 93.2, which is really good. Shorter the cooldown, the stronger she becomes. High Swiftness, 1445 relic gears in the future will give 18% additional cooldown. Conviction and Judgment Rune gives another 15% cooldown. And with proper cooldown gems as well, Wind's Whisper can go as low as 8 to 9 seconds, which is safely matches the 20-second Energy Combustion last tick. Without any of the gears and combat stats I mentioned, you won't be able to sync your skills properly. This is the first reason why Wardancer feels weak for you. Now let's go over Orb Generation. Moon Flash Kick. Most people take this skill to cover most of their orb generation, upgrading the Orb Generation tripod. You utilize a Wealth Rune as well. And as for First Intention Wardancer, this is used as a DPS skill too. Sky Shattering Blow. This is a counter, very short cooldown, and easy to land 2 hits that counts as a counter. Wardancer tend to hit counters most of the time in the raids due to this skill. If you level it up to the 3rd tripod, you can gain additional bubble as well. As for runes, Judgment Rune is added most of the time. Sweeping Kick. People add this to their skill kit if they feel lack of orb generation. Wealth Rune is added here as well, and First Intention uses this as a DPS skill. Flash Heat Fang. This skill is mainly a DPS skill, but it generates orbs as well. Conviction and Judgment Rune or Gale Wind is used here. Lightning Kick. This is a great mobility skill. Some people use it, some people don't. It has an additional orb gains tripod as well. But in order for you to use it as a quick mobility skill, you need to have the 3rd tripod. So people with the less skill points, you wouldn't have this, but it's like a good option to have. Pretty much any rune could be used, but most of the time Bleed Rune is used. And going with the Esoteric DPS skills, going with the Blast Formation first. You use the DPS tripods, and you use Gale Wind runes. You also have Esoteric Call of the Wind God. Also use DPS tripods. The 3rd tripod has an option where you can summon a tornado or you can be the tornado yourself, but this is more of a preference. Let's talk about how Wardancer should be built and played. First, you have your mandatory skills, which it fills up 3 slots. Since the buff lasts 6 seconds, your goal is to do much mechanics as you can during this time. This includes fill up at least 2 bubbles and land your Esoteric skill within this time frame, or landing your final tick on your Energy Combustion. So from here you would have the counter, and then you have 4 slots left. You can add either 1 Esoteric skill or 2 Esoteric skills, and the rest being filled up as the Orb Generation skill. It is very important to understand that it's not the engraving that is important right now. It is crucial to understand that engraving is not important. It's important to determine if you want to use an esoteric skill or not. For example, even without the esoteric engraving, you can use the esoteric skill, it just won't have the additional damage from the esoteric engravement. But if you want to use first intention, you would obviously remove the esoteric skill and add something like a flash heat fang skill for DPS. And since you won't need orb generations anymore, something like moon flash kick would be changed into the fire elemental damage or lightning elemental damage. Same case for other skills too. Instead of the orb gain, you would use the other two. Same case for your energy combustion as well. Change the skills. So you need to determine what skills are you going to use in order for to play this class efficiently. Engraving is something like a cherry on top. It's very important to understand that. Also, there is another problem if you're missing tripods, runes, and foundations. It will be a little bit harder for you to do the Esoteric Wardancer. Let me show you an example. Here's the combination of the skills without runes and tripods. You won't be able to fill out the bubbles because you don't have the necessary foundations. And here's the combination of runes and proper tripods. As you notice, I didn't even use the lightning kick to fill out my bubble for esoteric skills. Also, here's a good follow-up example of reusing my buffs again before my energy combustion explodes for maximum DPS efficiency. You can use the cooldown tripod on Wind's Whisper if you lack cooldown, but you would have to grab the lost 16% crit rate from somewhere else. And we can do that by grabbing more crit combat stats or adrenaline engraving. This is how the thought process would be for Wardancer and majority of the classes in Lostark. Wardancer has many builds, and those builds are not based off of engravings like other simpler classes. You have to look into skill mechanics and see how they work together within each other, then build your gears and tripods based on that. If you want to cycle 2 esoteric skills, you will need to figure out how to fill up 4 bubbles within 6 seconds, and land both of your esoteric skills to be efficient. If you cannot use your esoteric skills every cooldown, your DPS is going to be very bad. So Wardancer is like building an intricate machine. All skills need to work together, matching in cooldowns to synergize with each other. So before thinking of what engravings you should get, think about the primary objective of the class's DPS goals. With that being said, let's talk about engravings for a bit. I will talk about 3 builds and their playstyle. First intention is where you remove the esoteric skill to make Wardancer much more simple. This means you have to utilize your buffs first, then use your DPS skills at max efficiency. Always make sure the energy combustion's last tick lands with full synergy as well. Utilizing focus runes and conviction and judgment runes, the DPS becomes much cleaner. To give an example, to just show you the theory, here's me using the awakening cooldown buff from the relic gears. Then I use my energy combustion, which my conviction rune is in. I use Sky Shattering Blow to activate my Judgment rune, which is 15% more cooldown for 5 seconds. Then I proceed to use my Wind's Whisper and Roar of Courage, and then utilize my DPS skills for damage. Afterwards, I will keep using Lightning Kick or Flash Heat Fang because they're in short cooldown. When my Energy Combustion is about to finish, which it turns red, you need to make sure your Roar of Courage and Wind's Whisper is ready to go to provide full bust before the biggest damage. Since the buff lasts 6 seconds, pressing it around 5 to 3 seconds is usually safe. After the proper combination of skills, you use your DPS skills on top of them as well. Another thing to add is when your conviction rune comes back off cooldown, which is estimated to be about 30 seconds, make sure you control your judgment rune skill to get the cooldown buff when most of your skills are active. Engravings are as follows. You have First Intention 3 as your first engraving, and then you have general DPS engravings like Keen, Blunt, and Grudge. Raid Captain is also good due to your high swiftness, since more movement speed, the more effective the engraving is. Then you have an option to go Curse Stall, Increase Mass, or Adrenaline. The preference is whether you want to do more crit or just do more flat damage. Combat stat is Full Swift and Necklace on crit. Esoteric or no esoteric. The skill sets are about the same, but you exchange one of your skills like Flash Heat Fang or Sweeping Kick to an esoteric blast formation skill. Esoteric engraving is very efficient. Only at level 1 it provides 8% per extra orb you have. So your goal is to gain your orbs more than you spend. So you have 2 excess orbs at all times at every cooldown of your esoteric skill. The play cycle is exactly the same as First Intention, but think of the engraving as a cherry on top of a cake. It just adds extra damage to your esoteric skills. Esoteric 3. Having Esoteric 3 or Esoteric 1 does not determine this build, but is dependent on how many esoteric skills you have and how efficiently you can cycle them. If you wish to take 2 esoteric skills and maximize their damage, you would take Esoteric 3. If you want more crit, you can take Adrenaline and Esoteric 1. Engravings are very simple. You replace First Intention to Esoteric 1 or 3, and add more damage engravings accordingly. Also, we need to quickly talk about Awakening Engraving. The 1445 relic set bonus provides the cooldown and attack damage for 2 minutes. The problem is your Awakening's cooldown is 5. You can cover this up with High Swiftness and Conviction and Judgment rune, but it's tough to get it set up that way. Instead, by going level 2 Awakening, you can decrease your cooldown under 2 minutes to keep this relic buff up 100% of the time. This doesn't apply right now due to the global server not having relic gears yet, but keep in mind these type of mechanics exist. And as for combat stats, for something like Esoteric 3, you would need a little bit of spec because you need more bubble gain. And since crit is going to be lacking because you take combat stat on spec, you would be taking adrenaline to cover up that missing crit. If you see my friend's final build of Wardancer, his collectibles, runes, tripods are at best in slot. Therefore you see him dish out tons of damage due to all the buffs and synergies match the DPS and energy combustion's last ticks. It will take you a very long time to achieve this form, but it's definitely something to aim for, and this is the final style of Wardancer. So again, regardless of what the engraving is, it is crucial to look at the bigger picture. Ask yourself what skills you're planning to use. Plan tripods and engravings accordingly. For example, as I said before, if you want more, you could go spec, then adrenaline engraving for crit support with SO1. If you're stressed about orb gains and want to focus on energy combustion last ticks, full swift, crit, and first intention and flat damage engravings. Everyone has their different preferences. So instead of telling you guys many builds that exist, I think it's more important to teach the thought process of how these builds are formed. Try out yourselves in Trixian, min-max the cooldown and see what is available for you. This is also why I recommend First Intention for new global players, because First Intention simplifies her skill kit by a lot and provides reasonable growth roadmaps. With that being said, this concludes the video. As always, thanks again guys, bye!